Welcome back to Let the Quran Speak. Now we answer questions we've received from you, our viewers, and if you have a question yourself, you can visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com. Okay, Brother Shabir, the first question is an interesting one. It says, is an act just because God declares it to be just, or does God declare it to be just because it is just?
This is an old dilemma, goes back to the Greek philosophers, because if you answer by saying that it is only just because God declares it to be just, well then it means that today it is wrong to murder because God said thou shalt not murder, but tomorrow if God says thou shalt murder, then that's the right thing to do. And so it's wrong one day but right the other day, depending on God's arbitrary pronouncement. If, on the other hand, you say that, no, there is some moral requirement already, and God declares it to be so because there is that moral requirement already. So murder is wrong, God knows it, and now God declares it to be wrong because he knows it from some other source. But then where's the other source? Who made murder wrong such that God has to now declare it to be so? Is there some other source or power besides God? So one is now in a dilemma. But the way out of this dilemma is to say that God is the source of all things. He is the source of everything that we can think and imagine. He is the source of the entire universe and all of its laws, natural and otherwise. And he knows what is good and what is just because that flows out of his own good and just nature. Okay. And so what he declares, that is just, and we know it to be just because he declared it, or because he gave us the sense to recognize what is just, because that sense also comes from God. So in either case, we know what is just and what is right, either because of God's specific declaration or because of our own inner conscience given by God, and that justice or rightness flows out of the nature of God.
Okay. This is another question, another very difficult question. Does the God of Islamic doctrine not love those who are in hell?
Well, this often is posed by people who think that God loves everyone, and so they ask, well, you know, what about the sinner and being in hell and so on? And doesn't Islam say that God does not like this person or that person, you know, the sinner or the transgressor or the proud boaster and so on? So our answer to this should be that God loves everyone in a certain basic way because they're all his creatures. At the same time, he will love more those creatures who do what is right and try to serve him. And this is only to be expected. And naturally, he penalizes those who commit wrong, but he still loves them in a basic way, and he wants to cleanse them of evil, to purify them of the accretions of evil that they have gathered upon their own souls, and eventually to rescue them in some way, if at all that is logically possible.
All right, okay, we'll move on to the next question then. We have many questions. This is a question about bearing the burdens of others. So the person is saying, is there a contradiction? In one verse, God says that no individual will bear the burden of another individual. And in another verse, God says some individuals will bear the burden of those whom they misguide. So how do those two verses gel together?
Yes. Now, when the Quran makes the declaration, no one bears the burden of another, that's a broad and general principle. One is responsible only for one's own crimes and actions, not for the crimes and actions of another person. At the same time, the other verse which says that those who introduce wrong things or those who lead others astray will be responsible for the actions of the others. This verse is speaking about a certain responsibility that comes with leadership and with guiding other people, well, more so misguiding other people. So you lead somebody down the wrong path, the person then got harmed by going down that wrong path. You are in fact responsible for that in some way, because especially if you knowingly misguided the person, you sent the person down the wrong road. The person drove down the end of a cliff, for example. So you're responsible for telling the person to go in that direction. Naturally, there is that responsibility. But at the same time, the person who went down that wrong road also has a certain degree of responsibility for his own actions. So the two are separable as two layers. The person who went the wrong way is responsible for going that wrong way, but the person who misguided that person is also responsible for the misguidance. So the one who is blamed for misguiding others is not blamed for the actions of the others. He's blamed for the very fact that he has misguided the others.
Okay. This is another question about being born in sin. So the individual is asking, are we born in sin because of the sins of Adam and Eve?
The answer to that is no. The Quran again and again says, "La taziru waziratun wizra ukhra." The bearer of burden is not going to be burdened with the burdens of others. So we bear our own burdens. We're responsible for our own sins. What Adam did, we believe to have been forgiven. God forgave Adam. The Quran says in Surah 20 that God chose him and forgive him. In the 120th verse of that surah. So we do not believe that there is an original sin which gets transferred to subsequent generations. There is an original lesson, and the lesson is that Satan will always attack us and try to mislead us and cause us to commit sin and transgression, disobedience of God. But after having committed sins, if we seek the forgiveness of God, that forgiveness is always open and available to us, and God will forgive us. That is the original lesson that we have. It is this that is being passed on to us for our later learning, but not an original sin.
So individuals are born in a state of purity then?
That's right. We believe that people are born in what is referred to as the fitra, the natural disposition, and that is a neutral situation where one naturally is inclined to worship God. But the society and environment and other influences might turn a person away from the worship and recognition of God.
And we can always turn back then by repenting to God.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for your time, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
And we'd like to hear from you. You can visit our website, www.quranspeaks.com. Send us your comments, your suggestions, and of course, your donations. I'm Safiya Ali. For all of us here at Let the Quran Speak, thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.